Hi, this is Scott Dudley from Funnel Fella Radio, and today we're up to episode number 36, and we're going to be taking a bit of a look at the advantages and disadvantages of multiple funnel paths. So, an interesting point that Ben Moot raised in a recent podcast interview that I did with him was how important it was to keep things simple and not to go overboard with having too many funnel paths. And I think this is an excellent point for people that are relatively new to funnels and still figuring out how to actually make them work and how to start making money. So a good example is setting up quiz funnels where you have multiple different scenarios that take the user down a specific customized path based on how they answer the quiz. So here are some downsides to overcomplicating things when you have numerous funnel paths from a quiz. First of all, the more questions and options you add, the more work it takes to set up. Now, I'm not saying that it's not worth the time and effort to set it up. If this is done properly and if you've got the budget to get it all set up and working, then it's definitely worth it. But for somebody that's just getting started and wants to launch a funnel and start to get some results, then from personal experience, to set up a especially complicated quiz funnel is a lot of work, and it can get quite confusing and quite frustrating. And it's actually nowhere near as easy as it seems. So that's why it's important to take into account that, particularly when you've got a large quiz, the longer the quiz, the longer it's going to take and the more complicated it is to set up. So it also gets very confusing to make sure everything is connected properly and working 100% as it should be. The problem that I've come across is that it's super easy to miss something and struggle to pinpoint where the issue is. So I guess in some ways this has a lot to do with the software that you're using to set up the survey as well. But yeah, the surveys that I've set up in the past have been a little bit cumbersome, and it required a lot of concentration and effort to make sure that if somebody answered this, answered that, answered this, and answered this, then they were eventually redirected to the correct page, and then the correct page had relevant information based on what they just answered. So it's very easy to make a mistake where if you're not paying attention and if you're not fully concentrated on what you're doing, because there's a lot of copy and pasting involved in the way that I was doing it. And I've set up a lot of funnels, and I've looked at a lot of funnels in my time. But yeah, it's very easy to mess it up, and then the customer will either end up on an error page, or they'll end up on the wrong page, which was actually designed for a different scenario. Then the third point is that you need a lot of traffic to make it worthwhile. So, I mean, otherwise, if you just get trickles that go into each segment, then it doesn't really serve the purpose or make it worthwhile to go to all of that effort to set it up. So you have to really know what you're doing. You have to make sure that you're asking the right questions, that the quiz is set up properly, that people are actually engaged and, they're actually bothering to get to the end of the quiz. Because, you could go to all of that work, which can be, dozens, if not hundreds of hours of work for a really complicated one. And then you make it go live, and then if hardly anybody wants to complete the quiz, or if you're hardly sending any traffic to the quiz, because, a lot of people, they get scared, which I do, with paid traffic. And, if something's not working, if you send 100 clicks to a survey and, you're only getting 2 or 3 people to make it to the end of the quiz, then and then you stop, then you basically just wasted all of your time. So that's another important thing to keep in mind as well. And then the fourth point, which is probably the most important point here, is that it's very difficult to work out what to actually optimize because you're looking at so many different touch points. So say, for example, if you've got 4 pages and each page has four different options to answer the question, then it's sort of the amount of combinations of answers sort of multiplies as you go from each page. So in that particular case, you would have 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 different combinations. So 4 by 4 is 16, by 4 is 64, and then by another 4 is what, 256. So that's 256 different combinations that you have to, set up so that they end up going to the right place. And then not just the setup side of it as well, but more what I'm talking about here with the optimizing is that when you've got that many different funnel paths, you need to, who's got time to look at 256 different combinations and find out how many people are getting through the quiz, where they're getting stuck? It just turns into a nightmare, because not only do you set up the actual different scenarios where people end up on, but then you've also got to set up the follow-up sequences as well. And the follow-up sequences, if this is done properly, the follow-up sequences should match exactly what they've answered in the survey. So if you are doing a survey, that's why I recommend that you keep it to as few questions as possible, and also as fewer options to answer as possible as well. Otherwise, each page, you're just multiplying it continually for the amount of different options. But that said, there are certainly some very good upsides to tracking a funnel with multiple paths. The main points being that you can segment your subscribers into specific groups, which makes it super easy to speak to them about things that relate to their specific situation and core problems, desires. So, this is the whole point really of setting up a survey funnel, where rather than just giving them a one-size-fits-all solution, you're finding out exactly, what they want or what their problems are. And then once you've diagnosed the problem, you can then prescribe a solution based on what they've already told you. So from that point of view, it's a really excellent way to segment the subscribers into specific buckets, as a lot of people like to call them, and then send them relevant messages to their situation. So it's fantastic in that regard. It's also a better experience for the user, as they are not shown generic messages that apply to a broad group, which I've sort of already just mentioned that. Rather than the one size fits all, they're getting specific answers based on, answers based on how they've answered the questions. So you also get a good idea about what are the most common problems or desires, and can focus more time on those areas. And with the end result of that being that you can possibly end up niching down specifically into that area. So, for example, if you're, providing funnels for, building funnels for all different clients without having a specific niche, it could end up that you've discovered that the majority of the people that are going through your funnel are owners of SaaS programs, software as a service, and that way you sort of discover, okay, so I'd be better off focusing on the people that own SaaS subscriptions or programs, rather than just building funnels for everybody, because the market's spoken, and you can basically see that this is something that's going to make sense economically and it's worth focusing on. So that way you can actually niche down. And then the fourth point is that you can offer relevant products to these people as you've drilled down to better diagnose their problems. So once again, as I've said, no one-size-fits-all solutions. So the actual products that you end up providing to the customers, they can be created specifically for that market segment, which, for something like health, for example, can be super valuable. Because obviously, a 15-year-old male is going to have different health issues, or let's say a 25-year-old male is going to have different health issues to a 7-year-old female, for example. And if you're speaking to both of those people with the same message, then, if you're offering them the same product, then it's not going to speak to their needs as well as if you actually offer them a product that is created specifically for them. Okay, so in summary, there are definitely pros and cons to multiple funnel paths and quizzes and surveys. But I think the main point is for funnel marketers who are just getting started or are not making much money yet, it's ideally better to keep things as simple as possible and to avoid, having 256 different funnel paths because it just makes things super complicated. And the advanced segmentation is better for those that have large ad budgets. They also have a team to analyze the data properly and to also set up the tech side of it as well, which can be a bit of a headache, particularly if you're a one-man band who's doing everything and you're not good at tech. That can just drive you crazy. And also for marketers that have extensive experience as well, so they're sort of veterans and they know what they're doing, compared to someone that's just getting started and trying to find their feet. So in conclusion, if you want to learn how to set up quiz funnels properly, then I highly recommend Ryan Levesque's book Ask. This is a superb book. This is the best system I've ever seen for quiz funnels. This runs through an entire system, including the emails as well, the follow-up, that just continually pivots to diagnose what the market wants and then provide them solutions. And it's just continually looping on each other and pivoting. And if it's done properly, then I can see enormous value in it. I haven't actually managed to set one up myself yet. It is complicated and it does require effort and work and focus. And it also requires, to be spending a decent amount of traffic and to follow it, the whole system properly. So if you haven't checked that out yet, I'd highly recommend to buy that book, Ask. The second part of the book is where the actual meat of the book is, where that actually runs through the actual strategy. And then the first half of the book is his story. So the story is interesting, but the actual meat that's going to help you to build these survey funnels or quiz funnels is in the second part of the book. So anyway, hopefully you got a bit of value out of that. And that's it for today. And I'll catch up with you next time on Funnel Fella Radio. Bye for now.